Today I'm making a door in the side of the ferry boat in the Bulwarks, and it's a pretty cool project, so I thought I'd show you how I'm doing it. I've made quite a few of these doors in the sides of the boats now. This will actually be the 6th door that I will have made, and so I've got the process down pretty well. But they're really handy to have to be able to step out onto the dock if the boat's in a position like this. On this particular door, I had to start by moving the cleat forward, and so I fabricated a new cleat in the same style as what the old cleat looked like. I cut a hole in the bulwarks for the line to be able to go through over to the dock, and I made sure that that could hold the boat in place before I cut out the old one. You can still see some of the old one on the right there, but the majority of that will be cut away. And after that, the process was pretty much the same. I'd use the bulwarks that were there for the most part, and I would start on the hinge side. I'd cut out the old bracing where the hinges were going to go, and I'd replace that with a much thicker and stronger piece of angle iron for the hinges to go onto. And I'd use that new piece of angle iron as a guide to cut down the side. And I found out that I wouldn't want to cut all the way just yet. I'd leave little tabs for the bulwarks to be connected, and that way it wouldn't warp. After the hinge tubes were made, I would then put them on a solid piece of rod and locate them where I wanted them to go. And I'd keep that rod there while I welded the hinge tubes onto the thicker piece of angle iron. And I could make sure that the rod was level fore and aft and also side to side. And that way the door wouldn't bind as it opened, and it also would open relatively easy. If that rod was not level, then potentially the door would want to fall open or close. After those were aligned and finish welded in, then I would move to building the hinge plates that would attach to the door. And I cut those hinge plates out of 3/4 inch material. And so I would locate those on where the hinge was going to go on the top of the tube, and I'd mark through the bottom of the tube where the pin was going to go in the hinge plate. And then I would torch cut a hole in the hinge plate and weld a pin into that hinge plate. And so as the door would open, then it would pivot on that tube and the pin that was in the tube. Then forward of the door, on this one, I'd have to box it in. If I didn't have to box it in, then I could just cut out that bracing and add a new piece of bracing in the bulwarks. But this particular one needs to get boxed in. And then same way like I did the aft part of the door, I'd use the new bracing or the new piece of plate that boxes that in as a guide. And then I would move on to the X braces and make sure that the X braces had the door solid so that it couldn't warp. And then I would cut along the rest of the bottom, and I'd cut the tabs that still joined the door to the bulwarks. And then the door could open and would swing freely. And then I'd move on to fabricating a latch. These doors are super handy to have if the boat is docked in this type of a position, because normally we'd have to leave the stern ramp down, or we'd leave a gap big enough in between the stern ramp and the bulwarks that we would crawl through, or we'd have to climb up and over the side. And so this way it's a much safer and easier process to just be able to open the door and step out onto the dock. And when the boats are parked on the wall over on the mainland, you can just open the door and step out onto the wall. And same thing when we bring these boats up to the shipyard. This is the other side of that same boat, and you can see the latch is relatively easy to open, but the door can swing wide through 180 degrees, be fully open, and that makes it a good place to shovel snow out of in the wintertime. Obviously, in this situation, you wouldn't want to step out there because there'd be nothing to step onto. But this is the door that we use when it's at the wall over on the mainland. We haven't used these in any sort of a man overboard drill or any type of situation like that, but it would be another access point if we needed it. There have been times that these doors have had pressure put on them from the pilings or from the tires that are on the sides of our docks, and so that latch was a good solution to what I needed at the time, but I'm going to change the design of those latches to be something a little bit stronger because a few of them have gotten bent already. So the design of the latch will be similar to how the hinge works, except it'll have a removable pin. And so it's basically like a reverse design of the hinge, except instead of a hinge pin that's welded in solid, it'll be removable, and that way you can open the door, and it'll be a much stronger latch. Here's another example of the ferry being docked at the wall and gaining access through the door. We used to have to climb up over the tops of the bulwarks, and now it's relatively easy. You can just open up the latch, push the door open, step up onto the deck, and then the door can continue to open as far as you need it to. And then you have access to bring tools on and off the boat. Some heavier equipment can be unloaded or offloaded, and then when you're done, you can just step back out onto the dock. I think these door projects have been challenging and interesting. I'm glad I got the opportunity to do them, and I think it's cool that they'll be a part of the boats from now on and into the future.